Welcome back, true believers. I have returned from my many adventures fighting hellspawns with Angela, killing demons with Constantine, and searching the Nightmare-verse with Doctor Strange to watch these movies and come to you today to bring you some more reviews. I forgot to thank one of my good friends for designing my profile picture and banner in the previous video. I will link her Twitter down below, so please check her out. She is literally amazing. Now, this is part 2 of every live-action comic book movie reviewed, so if you haven't seen part 1, I recommend you go watch that first, or don't, you sexy rebel. Now, the movies contained in this video are around the exact same time that DC and Marvel started facing bankruptcy in the 90s because, let's be honest, the 90s got pretty weird with comics. During this time, Image Comics was formed and other big name publishers entered the fight for comic book domination. However, Marvel most notably decided to sell off the rights to their characters to multiple movie studios in order to salvage what was left and earn quick profits to save their company. DC as well sold a bunch of their rights to Warner Brothers. I mean, the 90s were a weird time. They literally killed off Superman, brought him back. Literally every other character from DC was now replaced with some new version of themselves, like Azrael Batman, and Marvel was doing weird things with their character designs like the Wild Wolverine. They tried to copy the Image Comics style once all their artists quit to form Image Comics. Invisible Woman had a weird costume, and never forget the Clone Saga. So today I'm going to talk about the movies that didn't help salvage these companies at all. I'm going to begin by talking about a few cinematic failures that signaled the coming downfall of the industry. However, at the end, we're going to talk about the movie that saved the genre on its own. If you thought I got upset during the last video, just wait until this one. It's going to be a rough ride. And by the way, I'm Wizza and welcome back to every live action comic book movie reviewed. So let's get started with Captain America. This is a bad movie and you probably didn't even know it existed, because I didn't know this movie existed until I added it to the list, and I honestly see why. I can't even give a good summary, to be honest. Captain America becomes Cap, goes to fight the Red Skull, gets his ass whooped, gets strapped to a missile where he's then sent to DC and changes its course to Alaska where he's frozen, and then later Red Skull has corrupted the US government, except the current president saw Cap when he was strapped to the missile on a visit to Washington DC when he was a kid, and he knows about the Red Skull's infiltration, and his best friend is a reporter who he sends to go get Captain America from Alaska when some ice diggers find him. Yeah, as you can tell, this movie is kind of confusing, and I don't want to keep trying to explain. So basically, Cap has to go take down Red Skull after he kidnaps the president. The plot is really messy, and as you can tell, the movie just kept going without giving you a moment to breathe and understand what is happening. I mean, I understand, but if you think too hard or try to explain, you just realize how whack this movie really is. It also looks really bad. It's so poorly shot and edited, it felt claustrophobic the entire time. I mean, I'm not kidding. Look at all these clips. I'm not editing this right now. These flips, not me. Yep, that's the movie. Anyways, also, the translations for other languages are off when they're said, if they're even there at all. Like, the person will speak and then another person will start speaking and then the translation will show up, and sometimes they just don't put translations at all, which is acceptable, but that's only if what we're seeing on the screen is clearly showing us what we're talking about. It's frustrating, but let's get to my real complaint. This isn't Captain America. This is John Walker. This is Walmart brand Captain America. I'm a huge fan of Captain America, and the Cap I know from the comics is a leader who puts the lives of others first, serum or no serum. He represents the peak of humanity and our will to do good. This is just a guy from Brooklyn named Steve who took some steroids. I'm not joking, because we don't get any kind of background on who Steve is besides slight narration from side characters. Now let me take a moment to address the Captain America in the MCU. Well, the previous Captain America in the MCU. In the first act of Captain America: The First Avenger, we spend a good amount of time beforehand developing Steve's character and how he just wants to do good and is willing to risk his life without a second thought. In this movie, we just don't get any of that, or develop his reaction to being a man out of time and how different the world is, or discovering what makes him worthy to be Cap. In comics and now in movies, they constantly talk of how the super soldier serum brings out your true self, and before Rogers even gets the serum, his true self is a good person with a strong will. Damn, somebody get this man a Green Lantern ring. I think this is a good moment to talk about when it's important to have comic book accuracy. Now, I said previously it's okay to change things about a character, storyline, or use them for a different purpose. However, sometimes it just doesn't work, especially when you get core parts of the character incorrect. Some people don't like Batfleck because what Zack Snyder did was change core parts of the character, and honestly, Captain Captain America isn't a character that's hard to get wrong, just like Spider-Man and Superman. Cap is a character that just wants to do the right thing and fight for the sake of humanity. Like, dude is so pure, he can lift Thor's hammer. And somehow, movies keep misunderstanding characters, which is why the MCU takes from the most obscure but also the most standard aspects of comics to be original but also stay faithful. They take the wacky, goofy storylines and elements from comics and the core values, beliefs, and meanings of characters and develop new stories that are enjoyable for all viewers. Most of the time. This movie tries to get a reaction out of me for so many moments, such as in the beginning when he meets his love interest when he leaves for the military, and there's this emotional moment where he shows how he can't leave off without seeing her, and I'm just here like, because we spent no time with these characters, and it kept happening because it's supposed to be emotional later in the movie when he ignores the problem at hand just to go see his love interest from the 40s. Can we please stop having Steve go up and meet his love interest from the 40s when he comes out the ice? It's really weird. Why do we keep doing it? It's so creepy. And for some reason, he always goes and wants to get with their niece or daughter afterwards. It's so creepy and weird. Please stop. Just kill them off, have Cap walk up to the grave, shed a quick tear, boom, you're done. Also, Red Skull in this movie is literally insane, but it's not really explained what his motivation is besides the beginning, which shows he was kidnapped as a kid, but then Steve tries to turn him back to good with a tape recording of the night he was kidnapped. Like, I mean, good try, but I don't get why making him relive his childhood trauma would make him a good person. Nice job, Cap. Really did a great job there. Also, for some reason, Cap has an obsession with saying he's feeling sick to get people out of the car, but it was actually kind of cute, and I like it. It was cute. I like that. I like when characters have cute little things they do. Spidey has like his cringy quips and they make you laugh. Hulk is a baby sometimes, and you know, that kind of stuff. I like it. Keep doing that. Anyways, I don't know. I don't really want to talk about this movie anymore. I've gone on long enough and it's only getting worse from here. I mean, look at the length right now. Look at the length of this video. We're gonna be here all day.
Just don't know when to give up, do you?
I can do this all day.
The only thing I can give this movie credit for is that it's the most comic accurate Cap costume. Oh wait, not anymore. But besides that, it was just physical and mental pain for an hour and a half. 1.5 out of 10, this Cap should have stayed in the ice. Next is gonna be Batman Returns. Now this movie is near perfect, and in my opinion it's better than the first one. Sorry man, I just love Danny DeVito. This series went from having one character be literally insane to the entire cast being insane. Like seriously, somebody should go check up on these guys. It should be unethical to have this many people going crazy for a movie, but also I mean that's how it should be with all Batman media, ground level, but every character is crazy in their own way. I should also mention I don't like it when movies try to balance more than one villain at a time, and this movie does it right. Penguin is our main villain while Catwoman is a conflicting villain as she tries to figure out where she stands, and Max Schreck is the one pulling the strings in the background. Danny DeVito really put his soul into the Penguin. I mean literally at times I was kind of scared and uncomfortable.
Hey, my name is not Oswald! It's Penguin! I am not a human being! I am an animal! Cold-blooded!
I enjoy the change to the Penguin's origin, and it gives a good motivation to his plans throughout. Michelle Pfeiffer also does a good job of setting up Catwoman as mentally insane. She's held in so much for so long that the moment she snaps is perfect, and you really see the struggle of her trying to determine who she is throughout the movie. Also, it should be illegal for me to be this attracted to this woman, because holy shit, even when she was losing it in her room, I was like, damn, I would marry Michelle Pfeiffer. I like the changes to her origin as well. I've always enjoyed when Catwoman is a character conflicting Batman on what he needs to do in order to serve justice, as well as when she goes in between the line of good and evil. But I also like here how she's attempting to figure out who she is and how being pushed over the edge has caused her to change, unlike another certain version of Catwoman that tries to do the same thing and doesn't make it work. Michael Keaton is also really good in this movie. We actually get to see him be more of a detective in this one and use his smarts to outwit rather than fight his way out. Also, he has a good balance of how dark Batman is. In comics, Batman isn't that dark and brooding, he's actually a funny guy at times.
Batman to all points. I could use some air support, since I can't fly, at all. Now would be good.
He makes jokes and spits one-liners, and Michael Keaton is doing a really great job at balancing both. My only point down is that Max Schreck, while being integral, he isn't that well developed. Even though he's the main one influencing our villains, he's kinda useless, and a lot of the stuff that happens could have just happened without the movie trying to make him so important. If he was just some nameless businessman who pushed Catwoman out the window that she wanted to get revenge on, I'd be fine. It also would have been fine if it was just Penguin, because he has enough motivation and manipulation to plot all of this on his own. He's not really portrayed as stupid, he's actually quite smart at times. Like, just have him come out of the sewer, claim his inheritance, and use the connections of his dead parents to orchestrate Gotham into loving him, but you know, it's not that big of a deal. This movie is so close to being perfect, and I love this movie so much, so I'm gonna give this one an 8.5 out of 10. Good improvement, but Batman still can't turn his head. Okay, so I had to take a break and mentally prepare myself for this one, because that was the last good movie I'm going to talk about for this video until the very end. Because, well, a lot of the next movies are cinematic failures, and all for different reasons, but also because, as I said earlier, Marvel and DC Comics were not doing great at the time. But let's get into one of the main examples, the 1994 Fantastic Four. And I bet you're wondering, I've never heard of this movie, similar to Captain America 1990, and it's because you haven't. Because this movie was never even released. It was only made to keep the rights of the Fantastic Four to a major movie studio so they can make a better movie in the future. And so Marvel could keep the rights as well, which obviously didn't work, because now we gotta wait till about 2023 for the Fantastic Four movie in the MCU. The only way to watch this movie is on YouTube, which is in terrible condition because it's probably a bootleg of a bootleg of a bootleg. Or you can watch it on random bootleg copies that are way too expensive for me to get. So, sorry, I low-key watched this movie in shitty condition. Even Stan Lee didn't want this movie to come out and has said that he thought it was going to fail. Avi Arad, the guy we all hate for fucking up the Spider-Man movies, literally destroyed the copies of this movie. I can't really even review it because half the time the audio quality was so bad I couldn't understand what they were saying. However, I'm still gonna try, and I still know what happened because it's just a half-ass retelling of their origin. I can give credit to one actor in this movie, and that's the guy playing Doom, because you can watch it and you're just like, yeah, this dude's evil as shit. But you don't really know why. I mean, we see at the beginning, similar to the original origin, when the project with him and Reed fails, but it's never really explained why he just decides to become a bad guy and wants to destroy New York and get revenge on Reed. I mean, I know because I read comics, but a normal person wouldn't. Also, the effects on the Thing are really good considering it was the 90s. Like, his mouth actually does sync up with his speech really well, compared to a certain duck I know of. However, everything else is just really bad. The acting is really unenthusiastic from Sue Storm and Reed Richards. The guy playing Reed is trying so hard to be smart and mysterious, but Reed is more of a serious tone but in an uplifting way. And Sue Storm barely gets enough dialogue for me to critique it, and it's just her being like the cheesy young girl. Also, the age gap between her and Reed is ridiculous. Like, they have a crush on each other while he's in college and she's in middle school. Like, am I the only one who's noticing this? Also, the guy playing Johnny Storm is the cringiest actor I've ever seen in my life. Anyways, the effects on this movie look really bad. Like, even Superman 3 looked better than this, and the plot is all over the place. Like, the side story with the jeweler really wasn't necessary, and I honestly forgot it was there for a moment. And honestly, this movie deserved to never get released. I think if it was, Marvel would still be bankrupt to this day. However, the cast and crew didn't even know this movie was not gonna get released, and didn't know until they were trying to do promotional stuff for it, and then they told them, nah, you can't do that. So I don't really even feel comfortable giving this one a score, so I'm gonna give it a gold star that says it's okay, you tried. Anyways, yeah, next is gonna be Judge Dredd. Now, before I begin this next review, I'm gonna talk about something I need to address about my belief on superheroes. I am never one to shy away from politics and media, and if you guys want to hate my channel for not doing so, go ahead, it's not gonna change a thing. Now, I am a firm believer that every story told in any superhero film should have a purpose, and while sometimes it's fine to have a silly and goofy movie, I think if you have a real opportunity to talk about a deeper meaning of life and address themes that relate to the real world, then you should go ahead and dive right in. Good examples of this are in recent shows like WandaVision and Captain America and the Winter Soldier. Yeah, sue me, I'm calling him Cap now because that's who he is.
I'm sorry, wait, who are you? Captain America.
And recently, comic books themselves, movies and TV shows have decided to up the ante on representation and meaning, such as Miles Morales. However, it's always been like this. Every character made by Stan Lee is supposed to relate to a struggle or issue one person can face in the real world. While in DC, their characters are supposed to inspire hope, truth, and justice in our hearts to do good by others. Prime examples are the X-Men. X-Men was made not only because Stan Lee was being forced to write a new superhero team, but to reflect racial tensions in America when publishers wouldn't let Stan Lee write a lot of African American stories, so he did it right under their nose. Jon Stewart was made because the writers at DC realized that statistically, that at that point in time, a black person should be a superhero, just considering the population of African Americans in the US, and they use him to address the racial biases that characters may still have, like Hal Jordan, which brings me to Judge Dredd. Now, the point I just brought up won't be relevant until later, so let's just get into the actual movie. Judge Dredd is very conflicting. It's really hard for me to decipher this movie. I think it's because I've never read the Judge Dredd comics, so this is just a regular movie review, but still a superhero movie review nonetheless. On one hand, this movie is a fun, cheesy action movie with tongue-in-cheek dialogue and over-the-top acting, especially from its side characters, and the exaggerated stoic tone from Sylvester Stallone. However, this movie has much to say about the status of police in the future and how one person can't just be judge, jury, and executioner, and the movie struggles to explore it more than a few words at a time. It struggles to find the balance of both, such as Fergie. He was a victim of Dredd's quote-unquote law, even though he was there by association, but Dredd never apologized or acknowledges his wrongdoing in the way he handles the law. And we never get a conclusion to that theme of the law isn't always right, and it's not right for one person to handle all aspects of the law themselves. And in the end, Dredd comes out on top like what he's been doing was right the entire time. His partner Hershey even says it in the beginning, and he just ignores it. And so many times, the moment for this discussion is ready to just happen, and they're at the free throw line with no one around during a home team game, and they just miss. Unless the point was to have a discussion on the ignorance of people in the real world that choose to not change the system in place to better life for others, then this movie really failed at being more than just another action movie. I think the more powerful statement would be to have Dredd dismantle the corrupt system in place after the events of the movie, because everyone wanted him to take over once the council was destroyed. But what do I know? I'm just another African American in the United States. Anyways, this movie left me disappointed and empty. 4 out of 10, cool action flick, but lacking in heart and soul. Next is Batman Forever. This is just another movie, I guess, but not a good movie. I feel like every time I enjoyed something in this movie, a big but would show up a few minutes later. Like, oh wow, I really like the spin on Robin's origin, and I enjoy how Bruce isn't forcing him to be Robin and is genuinely just trying to be a father figure, and is trying really hard not to let him be a hero. He genuinely just wants him to have a new home and lead a good life, unlike a certain Batman comic we all know of. But they take the bad boy persona a little bit too far, and it makes no sense later when he sounds like the Robin from the 60s. Or I like the liveliness of Gotham City, and it's really shown like a big city with bright neon lights and livelihood, but the movie is shot like uncut gems, and I'm about to have a panic attack at every single shot. Every single shot is in your face, and I swear to God, everything is tilted. I feel like I have vertigo. At times, this movie felt like watching a bad soap opera on daytime TV. Then it looked like I was at Six Flags in one of those attractions that's really themed and has a bunch of flashing lights. The villains are super underdeveloped as well. In the previous movies, we spent a lot of time getting to know the villains, so much so they had more screen time than Batman himself. Here, Harvey Dent is already Two-Face from the jump. Also, I didn't forget Harvey was played by Billy D. Williams in the first movie. I didn't forget. You really robbed me. And Riddler just goes insane after his project gets cut. Like, it makes sense that he's obviously got an obsession with Bruce Wayne earlier, but they kind of just forgot after a while, and it just comes up later out of nowhere, and I'm here like, wait, what? And I know in this movie we're supposed to focus on the mental issues they have, but like, they aren't really that relevant in this movie. They just kind of drop that Two-Face as DID, and Riddler has a personal obsession with Bruce Wayne. Compare it to the Two-Face episodes in Batman the Animated Series. Harvey Dent is trying to run for DA, but he repressed a lot of anger as a child, which leads to another persona developing as a result of his trauma. And he's trying to get help, and throughout the first episode we see when he changes and lets out his other persona, but one day in court it pushes him over the edge and leads to him ultimately letting out the persona completely, and they share his body as a system and become Two-Face. It's much more involved in that scenario, with the plot actually concerning Batman and Harvey Dent, and the eventual falling out between the two. It more feels like Jim Carrey and Tommy Lee Jones are just trying to be Joker rather than playing their respective characters. Literally, the entire movie, their characters are always laughing and giggling, and Riddler jokes around, and Two-Face is kinda just there after the second act. He's in the back seat of the movie even though he was the main villain in the beginning. To me, Two-Face isn't a laughing monstrous villain, he's a cold-hearted villain who leaves a lot to chance and is quick to anger. And the Riddler is obsessed with proving he's the smartest in the room and that Batman is his intellectual inferior, not becoming smarter. This movie just makes no sense and doesn't understand the characters. I can see now why Michael Keaton and Tim Burton wanted to step down. I will say, however, this movie has some of the best fight scenes in the series, and Batman's intelligence really shows. And Val Kilmer isn't doing a terrible job, and you don't notice the change too much. He actually makes a good Bruce Wayne, but at times he takes the funny and joking side a little bit too far. But at least it's not as bad as the next Batman movie. And Robin in this movie isn't that bad either, but I wish he wasn't an edgy teenager. Like, he's more of a Jason Todd than he is a Dick Grayson. But like I said earlier, it's really weird later on when he starts talking like the Robin from the 60s. Anyways, this movie just left me feeling sick in my stomach, but I did enjoy some parts of it. So 4 out of 10 because Batman still can barely turn his head. Next is Batman and Robin. Alright, I'm gonna make this one quick because I really don't like this movie, and I'm just gonna try my best to refrain from losing my cool. But can I just say this movie is literally said to have nearly ended the superhero genre for a reason, and I'm going to refrain from bringing up the bat nipples. We all know they're weird, I mentioned it, let's move on. Okay, Batman and Robin feels less like a movie and more like a late night showing of Batman and Robin on ice. This movie is a mess, and I know it's because Warner Brothers forced the director to fast track it, but honestly I don't think it would have made a difference. There's too much happening at once in this movie. They realized this was their last shot and shoved everything into this movie possible instead of making a good movie and saving the series. You got Batman and Robin's conflict between each other that just kinda ends with no real resolution, Mr. Freeze's plot to freeze the world, which only happens because Poison Ivy manipulated him, Poison Ivy trying to erase humanity, which actually makes sense, Alfred nearly dying, Batgirl showing up and she's just doing things like I can't even remember what she was doing in this movie and I just watched it. She like steals a bike, does some races, calls Batman a bitch, and then Alfred gives her a suit and like that's it. Then she comes back and helps Batman and Robin. And Bane is here too, but he's like Poison Ivy's assistant, I guess. I mean, Bane is actually a cool character in comics, but let's make him a dumb idiot. All in all though, I really can't describe how much I don't like this movie. It's shot like the last one, which doesn't help, and the only good thing here, while it's mostly hated, is Schwarzenegger's ice puns. This movie feels like it should have been made during the 60s with Adam West. The villains are corny and the heroes make no sense. Also, George Clooney is the worst Batman by far. He's like trying to be a little bit more lighthearted, and I know I said Batman is actually a funny guy, but just his delivery and acting doesn't fit with the character. I mean, he's not a bad actor, but he really wasn't made to play Batman, and the way he approaches the role feels weird. I didn't want to spend a lot of time on this movie because it really makes me upset. As you can tell, I'm already really getting upset, and I don't need to overload my mic today. Anyways, this one gets a 1 out of 10, maybe a 1.5 out of 10. Yeah, that's good. 1.5 out of 10 as genre and motivation killer. Seriously, this one made me want to stop watching these movies, but then I remembered it's still not as bad as Howard the Duck, and I made it past that movie, so I might as well keep going. Anyways, Batman's head is frozen on a stick. Please let him move his head. I'm begging at this point. Next is actually one of my favorite movies, and surprisingly, it's Spawn. Okay, now I know I've railed on some movies in this video, but I'm gonna talk about a movie I actually enjoy, like a lot. And here's the thing, before I review this one, I will reiterate, I know all of the flaws in this movie, and while I do prefer the animated series because it's literally amazing, I still really enjoy this movie because it was one of the first movies I watched as a kid. Yeah, I know it's not great, but in my opinion, it's okay to like bad movies. And when I railed on all those other movies, it's because I can't seem to find something fun to enjoy about them. And usually I do mention what I did like about them, but here I always seem to find something I enjoy. Also, Spawn is one of my favorite superheroes, and if you were wondering, it's Miles Morales, Batman, Peter Parker, Spawn, Static Shock. Top 5 right there, just in case you were wondering. So I like this movie, and I know it's nowhere near comic accurate, but like, it's just fun and nostalgic to me. This movie is typically hated, but what can I say, it was one of my first superhero movies I watched. Don't ask why I watched it when I was so little. I do prefer the animated series because it's more comic accurate and darker, and Keith David has the best Spawn voice, like they literally brought him back just for Mortal Kombat, and when I read comics, I hear his voice. But here we go. Michael Jai White is not doing a bad job playing Spawn. He's actually just an angry black guy back from hell who wants to take ass and kick names, but still has the emotional beats of wanting to see his wife. He's good at playing Spawn. I love the Violator in this movie too. He's exactly like the comic version, so I really thought it was cool. And while the story is changed, it just works for me. It's simple and gets straight to the action, but it does take its time to develop each character's motivation and more. However, there is some weird stuff. I may personally love this movie, but I gotta admit the flaws, because as I said earlier, I know all of them. No movie is safe in this series. I wish they kept Chapel in this movie. The moment in comics where Spawn goes to kill him and instead burns the skull logo into his face is one of my favorite moments. Also, some of the other actors aren't doing a good job, especially the guy playing Jason Wynn. He's less low-key sinister and more over-the-top movie villain. When in comics, Jason Wynn is a background player that's playing an intricate game of chess to build tension for the reader. However, here, he's like a maniacal movie villain laughing, and he even personally kills Al in the beginning, but Jason Wynn isn't the type to get his hands dirty. He just has other people do the work for him. And it really makes me upset that Terry is white in this movie. He's black in comics, and they literally forced Todd McFarlane to make him white in the movie because they didn't want white people to think that this movie was targeted towards only black people. Kinda annoying. I don't know, I feel like race bending minority characters is really stupid. Race bending a white character is fine because there's a bunch of white characters already, and while I do prefer minorities to get their own original characters, if we race bend a character to a minority, it's okay. Like, we really have to take anything we can get. And I'll admit, it was the 90s, but no one was really thinking that at the time. Like, this beautiful black queen wouldn't marry this ugly ass white dude. I'm not saying white people are ugly, but come on, just look at him. Also, the special effects in this movie are not that great. I wish they made a real cape for Spawn instead of this CGI one. Like, it literally moves into his body at times, and that's like the coolest part in the comics. Like, Todd McFarlane really has an obsession with capes. I realize this review has been me just comparing it to comics, but as I said earlier, Spawn is literally one of my favorite heroes, and it's hard for me to not talk about the comics when talking about this movie. I literally own almost all of the Spawn Origins collection, but what can I say, nostalgia really took over for me on this one, so I'm gonna give this one a 6 out of 10, but I'm gonna do something new and give this one a personal score of 10 out of 10, a nice trip down memory lane.
Okay, next is gonna be Steel Star Shaquille O'Neal, and I'm gonna do the entire review in my Shaq voice. This really hurts my throat, but I'm gonna do it for you guys. Steel is bad, and I mean really bad. So bad I barely want to review this movie, but I'm gonna do it anyway. But I'm gonna make it quick. It took me 3 tries to finish it because I kept falling asleep. It was just that boring. Steel in the comics is a really cool character because he's one of the best examples of how Superman inspired hope into people, and that just doesn't work because Superman isn't here. They just hint at it with a tattoo on Shaq's arm. I mean, my arm. Also, I'm a firm believer that writing can make or break a movie, and the writing here is atrocious. Every black character is being forced to talking like slang, even though that's not how we really talk. It's kinda racist. I really hate when movies use the black characters as just like side characters in a hood background because that's not really what it's like. But I know a lot of these actors had to take whatever roles they could get at the time. There weren't a lot of black leading roles if I'm being honest. Also, why the fuck are there Nazis in this movie? I'm Shaq. I believe there should never be Nazis in a movie unless absolutely necessary. So why the fuck are there Nazis in my movie? Also, none of the actors are doing a good job except for the woman playing Sparky. she's the only person bringing life to this movie. She just wants to help Shaq, me, and it's nice. And the moments where she gets to show how smart and intelligent and strong she is without the help of a man is really nice. Also, I'm glad she's not like a love interest or a damsel in distress. Like she gets kidnapped, literally busts out a gun from her wheelchair and starts mowing dudes down. Damn. Sorry myself. Shaq, me. But acting wasn't our calling. Also, could we please stop having scenes where Shaq has to make a free throw shot? Can we stop having scenes where I gotta make a free throw shot? I play basketball. I get it. I don't know how many times I say
I never make these.
in this movie. Also, the costume in this movie is really bad. But at least at least I can turn my head. Anyways, every line delivered by the actors just sounds really forced and uncomfortable, including for me, myself, and I. Like without Sparky, this movie would be very flat. Also, we really don't develop our villain in this. Nathaniel Burke is just insane, which would be okay if there was like a reason for it. He just does some really bad stuff that literally gets someone killed. And then the movie ignores it, like this dude should have been on federal watch. But no, the white man gets to murder people and then walk away free. I don't know, this movie really sucked. 1.5 out of 10, still not as bad as How the Duck.
Blade is fucking amazing. Now, before I give you the review, I'm going to talk a little bit more on what was happening at the time, like I said earlier, and what this led to. As you can see, after Batman Returns, everything was a flop, not just in the movies though, in the comics too. There were weird storylines and everyone was going bankrupt, but all of a sudden, someone at Marvel Studios must have been like, hey, let's just try. And they made Blade, and there's a reason this movie is the one that saved a genre and paved the way for the MCU. And when I say paved the way for the MCU, I mean it, because at the time, everyone wanted to just stop making comic book movies. DC wasn't making another comic book movie until Catwoman, and they're still in debt to this day. But Marvel took a goddamn chance and went all in on Blade at New Line Cinema, and it didn't save them from debt, but it got people back into their movies and comics. Soon after, a bunch more movies got into development, like X-Men and Spider-Man. If the Marvel movies were a house, Blade is the fucking foundation it's built on, because you can't build a house without foundation. It's not a masterpiece, but it's a damn good action movie. One thing I love about this movie is that the writers didn't make the script on Blade comics. They wanted Wesley Snipes to be Blade. Like, Wesley Snipes walks down the street and you're like, oh damn, that's Blade over there. Just like Robert Downey Jr. is Iron Man or Chris Hemsworth is Thor, and they fit so perfectly. I like how this movie doesn't treat the audience as stupid, having to explain every detail as if they're spelling it out for us. Everything is explained quick and fast and in passing dialogue, but you catch it just in time to the point that it's explained and you understand it and it's relevant later. There is barely any throwaway dialogue. The action is amazing and it's not too bloody or gory that it's in your face, except for, that opening scene. I'm pretty sure everyone felt a little bit uncomfortable watching that. Like, it was pretty bad. Also, Karen is a nice addition to the story. She's not a damsel in distress and can handle herself well. She gets attacked, and rather than trying to be with Blade or always needing him for protection, she just wants to go out there and kick ass too. She even ends up saving him, which is new because it's always the other way around. I don't know, I just like strong women in movies, but I will admit that one scene where he bites her was really weird, and we didn't have to keep cutting back to them only to hear. However, one thing I gotta take points off for is when we find out Blade's mother is still alive. It was really weird, and they just shoved it in there in the last act, and even then she's not like that important. She just keeps reiterating that she's his mother. Like, I get it. I saw the beginning of the movie. It works, but it wasn't really necessary. Also, Quinn is really annoying. Like, I'm here trying to have a fun time watching Blade, and this dude won't stop complaining about his arm and making weird jokes. And Deacon Frost is actually a really good character. He's another good example of a villain that's just pure evil. He just shows up and is like, what the fuck are y'all doing? We should be conquering the human race. We the originals. Time to take over, and just goes from there. Anyways, I love this movie. You can't change my mind. This movie gets a solid 8 out of 10, a bloody good time. Anyways, true believers, I'm glad we could get to this point, and I can't wait for the next video. We're going to start that one off with X-Men, which will be interesting to get to. However, I just want to thank you guys for watching, and you should leave a comment and subscribe while you're here, because once I finish this series, I want to just keep reviewing movies as they come out. I'm also thinking about doing every animated comic book movie, but we still have about 88 or so more movies to go. Well, I've already watched about 40 of the movies, but making these videos really takes a lot of time and effort, and I also have a job, and by the time we reach the end, there'll be like 10 more movies. Also, I think I'm going to add the MCU Disney Plus shows, just because they're really short and basically extended cut movies, and next week I'll probably be dropping an essay on either Loki, the new Long Halloween movie, or Cruella. Yeah, you heard me right, I like Disney. Because I have a lot of those already written out, and Loki might have just taken the spot for my favorite MCU show slash thing slash movie. It's not over yet at the time of this recording, and we still have 2 episodes left, but man, episode 4 literally blew my mind. I'm gonna let Black Widow make its rounds before I talk about it. It's already included on the list, so I'll talk about it when I get there. If you want to argue with me, go ahead and follow me on Twitter. I got that link down below. And don't forget to check out my friend's art. Like, please, she's literally awesome. Give her your money. Anyways, thanks for watching, and always remember, true believers, I'll see you next time. Excelsior.